The Blackwood estate in Lake Forest stood not as a home, but as a monument to absence. Perched just outside Chicago, the mansion was a cold masterpiece of modern architecture, all sharp lines, polished marble, and vast expanses of glass that looked out onto manicured, lifeless gardens. Inside, expensive art hung on the walls like artifacts in a museum, observed by no one. The silence was the most oppressive feature. It was a heavy, sterile quiet that absorbed sound and felt more profound than mere emptiness. Every room, though impeccably furnished and spotlessly clean, was a testament to a void, a carefully curated space where human warmth had been methodically erased. It was a house built to impress, not to be lived in, and the air itself seemed to carry the chill of a profound and lingering sorrow. Ethan Blackwood moved through this silence like a ghost in his own life. At 38, he was the picture of success, the CEO of a major financial firm, always encased in a tailored suit that served as a kind of armor. He arrived home late. The exhaustion of the day settled deep into his bones, but it was a weariness that sleep couldn't fix. He loosened his tie, a nightly ritual that brought no relief, and his reflection in the dark glass of the hallway window showed a man who had everything and nothing. His expression was a permanent mask of controlled distance, his eyes holding a profound tiredness that had taken root 2 years ago and had never left. He was a man drowning in his own fortune, inhabiting a shell of a life within the walls of a perfect, empty house. It was then that a sound, soft and unexpected, broke through the oppressive quiet. It was a melody, a gentle lullaby drifting from the second floor. Ethan froze, his hand still on his tie. Music had not been heard in these halls for years, not since his wife's passing. The tune was faint, yet it struck him with the force of a physical blow, instantly recognizable and overwhelmingly painful. It was the song she used to sing to their son, Ben. He stood motionless for a long moment, his heart hammering against his ribs. He wasn't sure what he felt, grief, anger, or a terrifying flicker of curiosity that he had long since buried. Pulled by an invisible thread of memory, he began to move toward the stairs, his steps silent on the cold marble. He reached his son's bedroom and saw the door was cracked open, a sliver of warm light spilling into the dark hallway. He peered through the gap, his breath catching in his throat. Inside, in the soft glow of a small lamp, sat Grace Miller, the nanny. She was rocking his son in her arms. Her head bent low as she sang the lullaby, with a tenderness that felt like a forgotten language. He watched as she gently stroked Ben's hair, her movements full of an easy, genuine affection that had been absent from this house for so long. It wasn't just a scene of a nanny putting a child to bed. It was a glimpse of life, of warmth, of the love his home had lost. In that moment, watching her, Ethan felt the first crack appear in the icy armor around his heart. In the days that followed, Ethan found himself watching her. It wasn't the detached observation of an employer, but something more searching, more curious. He started noticing the small, vibrant changes she had brought into the sterile silence of his home. There were now colorful, crayon-drawn pictures of dinosaurs and rocket ships held by magnets on the stainless steel refrigerator. He would come home not to oppressive quiet, but to the distant sound of Ben's unrestrained laughter, a sound he hadn't realized he'd missed so desperately. He saw how Grace listened to his son, truly listened, with a patience that felt both professional and deeply personal. Each small discovery was a quiet testament to the life she was coaxing back into the hollow spaces of their existence, and it filled him with a confusing mixture of profound gratitude and a deep, unsettling unease. He began to piece together the story of her life, not through direct questions, but through quiet observation and the snippets she shared with Ben. Grace came from a close-knit working-class family in a vibrant Chicago neighborhood, a world away from the manicured lawns of Lake Forest. She spoke of her parents and her younger brother with a simple, unaffected love that felt foreign to him, a language of connection he had long since forgotten. He overheard her telling Ben how she was saving every spare dollar from her salary to help her brother with his college tuition. This quiet dedication, this selfless ambition for someone else's future, stood in such stark contrast to the transactional, self-serving relationships that defined his own social and professional circles. Her integrity was a silent, powerful force he found himself increasingly drawn to. Slowly, deliberately, Ethan began to seek her out, creating small opportunities for interaction. It started with simple things. He would make a point to be in the kitchen when she was preparing Ben's breakfast, asking about her commute or the book she was reading. He'd find reasons to linger when he got home from work, inquiring about their day at the park or a new game they had invented. Each conversation was a carefully placed stone, building a fragile bridge across the vast, unspoken chasm between their worlds. He was drawn to her calm, to the genuine smile that always reached her eyes, and to the effortless way she made his cold, architectural masterpiece feel, for a few fleeting moments each day, like a real and breathing home. The true turning point arrived one evening when he came home earlier than usual. He found them not in the playroom, but in the center of the formal living room, surrounded by a fortress of expensive sofa cushions and draped blankets. Ben's face, peeking out from a makeshift window, was alight with a kind of pure, unadulterated joy that Ethan hadn't seen since before his wife passed away. Instead of retreating to his study as he normally would, he felt an irresistible pull to join them. He sat on the floor, listening to their imagined adventures. Later that night, acting on an impulse he didn't fully understand, he asked Grace to join him and Ben for dinner, not in the staff kitchen, but at the main dining table. A breach of protocol that silently acknowledged her place was no longer just that of an employee. That dinner was a fragile, beautiful thing. The massive oak table, usually a symbol of lonely formality, felt smaller, warmer. Grace spoke about her neighborhood, about the community garden she helped with, painting a picture of a life rich in connections, not possessions. Ethan found himself sharing a story about his own childhood, a memory he hadn't revisited in years. He saw Ben watching them, a look of contentment on his face that was worth more than his entire fortune. In that moment, he finally understood he wasn't just doing this for his son. He was doing it for himself. It's moments of clarity like these that change everything, and by subscribing, you help us continue to share these powerful turning points with the world. But the world outside their quiet, three-person bubble was not so kind or understanding. His late wife's mother, Eleanor Vance, arrived for an unannounced visit, her presence as cold and sharp as the winter wind off Lake Michigan. She observed the easy warmth between Ethan, Grace, and Ben, and her face hardened into a mask of polite but firm disapproval. She cornered Ethan in his study, her voice a venomous whisper as she accused Grace of being a cunning opportunist, a gold digger preying on his grief and using his son to secure her financial future. Every word was a carefully aimed dart, designed to poison his mind with doubt and shame, reminding him of his duty to his late wife's memory and his family's reputation. Eleanor's accusations burrowed deep into Ethan's psyche, awakening his own latent prejudices and fears he didn't want to admit he had. He was a Blackwood, a name that came with a legacy of carefully curated appearances and strategic alliances. What would his board members think? What about his so-called friends at the country club, who already traded in whispers and sidelong glances? He began to pull back, the fear of judgment overriding the flicker of happiness. The easy conversations with Grace became stilted and formal once more. The shared coffees stopped. He was trapped between the genuine warmth he felt in her presence and the suffocating weight of societal expectation. It's stories like this that remind us how hard it can be to follow your heart against the judgment of others. And if you feel the same, subscribing helps us bring more of these real-life struggles to light. Grace felt the shift immediately and profoundly. The warmth in Ethan's eyes, which had begun to feel like a safe harbor, was replaced by a troubled, distant coolness. The air grew thick with unspoken tension. One afternoon, she overheard a fragment of a tense phone call between Ethan and Eleanor, the words "inappropriate" and "know her place" cutting through the air like shards of glass. She saw the pitying glances from the other household staff, who now treated her with a careful, professional distance. The mansion, which had started to feel like a sanctuary of healing, reverted to being a gilded cage, a place where she was constantly being watched, weighed, and found wanting. Her simple kindness was being twisted into something ugly, and the realization was a slow, crushing weight on her spirit. Her heart ached, not just for her own bruised feelings, but for the collateral damage this invisible conflict was causing. She saw the confusion in Ben's eyes as his father retreated back into his sad, silent shell. The laughter in the hallways began to fade once more. She understood, with a clarity that was both painful and absolute, that her presence had become a source of turmoil, a problem for the man she had quietly, unexpectedly, grown to care for. The thought of staying and fighting a battle she was not equipped to win felt profoundly selfish. Her vulnerability was no longer just her social standing. It was her open heart, which now felt raw and exposed in this cold, unforgiving world. She had to protect herself, and more importantly, she had to stop being the cause of his pain. The decision was made one lonely evening after she had tucked Ben into bed, his small hand clutching hers as he drifted off to sleep. She looked around his room, at the drawings taped to the wall, at the stuffed bear she had helped him win at a local fair, at all the small tokens of the life they had built together. This place, this boy, had become a part of her soul. Leaving would feel like tearing a piece of herself away. But staying meant watching Ethan be torn apart by guilt and social pressure, and seeing Ben caught in the crossfire. With tears silently tracing paths down her cheeks in the dim light of the hallway, she sat down at the small desk in her room to write a letter, her hand trembling as she chose the words that would inevitably break 3 hearts. She refused to place any blame on him. In her letter, she expressed only her deepest gratitude for the opportunity he had given her and the profound love she had developed for Ben. She explained, with simple dignity, that she was leaving to find a position where she could simply be a nanny, without causing complications or distress for the family she had come to cherish. It was a letter of quiet resignation, a gentle retreat from a world she now understood she was never meant to be a part of. Her greatest hope, she wrote, was for him and Ben to find the complete happiness they both so richly deserved, a happiness she now believed her continued presence was preventing. She packed a single, small bag with her modest belongings, moving through the sleeping mansion like a ghost. She crept back to Ben's room for one last look, his face peaceful in the soft glow of his nightlight. Leaning down, she pressed a soft, lingering kiss to his forehead, a silent, tearful goodbye that held all the love she couldn't say out loud. She left the letter on the polished marble of the entryway table, a stark white envelope in the cavernous, dark hall where she knew he would find it first thing in the morning. As she pulled the massive front door closed behind her, the soft click echoed with a dreadful finality. She stepped out into the cold, pre-dawn air, leaving the mansion and the man inside to the crushing silence she had so briefly managed to fill. When Ethan saw the single white envelope on the cold marble of the entryway table, a profound chill that had nothing to do with the morning air seeped into his bones. He knew, even before his trembling fingers broke the seal, that it was from her. The crisp tear of the paper echoed like a gunshot in the cavernous hall. Her words were not angry or accusatory. They were filled with a simple, heartbreaking dignity, thanking him for an opportunity and wishing him and Ben a happiness she felt she was now preventing. The letter fell from his hand as he sank onto the bottom step of the grand staircase. The silence he had once curated as a shield now felt like a tomb, and in its suffocating emptiness, he finally understood. The true void was not the one his wife had left behind. It was the one that was about to begin, a future where Ben's laughter would once again fade into a distant memory. He didn't change his clothes or even stop for a coat. He was out the door and in his car, the powerful engine roaring to life and shattering the pre-dawn quiet of Lake Forest. The sleek vehicle tore through the manicured, empty streets of his neighborhood, a world of perfect lawns and silent, imposing houses that now felt like a prison. As he sped toward the city, the landscape began to shift. The sterile perfection gave way to the vibrant, chaotic pulse of Chicago. He was entering a world he had only ever viewed from behind tinted glass, a place of brick apartment buildings with colorful murals, of corner stores with hand-painted signs, of a life lived out in the open. This frantic journey was a pilgrimage in reverse, an escape from the cold cathedral of his wealth toward the messy, beautiful, and utterly real world where Grace belonged, a world he now knew he couldn't live without. He found the street easily, a narrow lane lined with two-story houses sitting close together, each with a small patch of yard and a welcoming front porch. He parked the car and simply stared at her home for a long moment. It was modest, painted a cheerful blue, with a porch swing moving gently in the morning breeze. He could hear the distant sounds of a city waking up, a dog barking, a truck rumbling past. This was her home, a place built not on fortune, but on family and community. He felt a profound sense of being an intruder, a man from a different, colder planet. All his confidence, his power, his carefully constructed identity as Ethan Blackwood meant nothing here on these worn wooden steps. He was just a man, stripped of his armor, terrified of losing the only true warmth he had felt in years. She was on that porch swing, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders when he walked up the path. Her eyes widened, a mixture of shock and sorrow filling them. Before she could speak, he began, the words tumbling out in a raw, desperate rush he hadn't planned. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracking. "I was a coward and a snob. I let what other people might think, what my family said, matter more than what I felt, more than you, more than Ben." He stepped closer, his gaze pleading for her to understand. "I was so afraid of dishonoring my wife's memory that I almost dishonored my own life. And I know she would have wanted this. She would have wanted to see Ben laugh again. She would have wanted me to be happy." He finally said the words that had been locked inside him. "I love you, Grace. Not because you fill a void, but because you made me realize I wasn't empty to begin with." He took her hands, his grip firm but gentle, his own fear laid bare for her to see. "Don't come back to be Ben's nanny," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, thick with emotion. "Come back to be my partner. Come back and build a life with us, a real life, full of noise and mess and crayon drawings on the refrigerator. Marry me, Grace. Let's be a family." He wasn't offering her a position or a place in his world. He was offering her his entire world, his heart, everything he was, asking her to make it theirs. He held his breath, waiting. He had laid his soul at her feet on this humble porch, a place more real than his entire mansion. A single tear traced a path down her cheek, but through it, her lips curved into the smile he had been so terrified he would never see again. In that silent, beautiful moment, he knew he was finally home. Their wedding was not a grand affair for society pages, but a quiet, intimate ceremony in the mansion's once lifeless garden, which Grace had coaxed back to life with vibrant flower beds. The house itself underwent a profound transformation. No longer a monument to absence, but a testament to presence. The oppressive silence was replaced by the constant, joyful hum of family life. Ben's laughter echoing down the marble hallways. The sound of music playing softly from the kitchen, and the warm, inviting aroma of Grace's baking filling the air. The expensive art on the walls no longer felt like museum artifacts, but simply the backdrop to a home where crayon drawings held equal importance on the refrigerator door. Ethan had not just invited Grace into his house, he had allowed her to turn its cold, architectural shell into a warm, breathing home, a sanctuary built on love, not legacy. Inspired by Grace's innate generosity and her stories of community, Ethan found a new purpose for the immense wealth that had once felt like a gilded cage. He established a $5 million charitable foundation in his late wife's name, a beautiful and fitting way to honor her memory by creating a legacy of hope. The foundation was dedicated to funding educational programs and scholarships for underprivileged children in Grace's old neighborhood, providing them with opportunities they might never have had. It was a bridge between his world and hers, a tangible symbol of his transformation. He learned that his fortune's true value was not in its accumulation, but in its ability to nurture, to uplift, and to create positive change in the lives of others. His success was no longer measured by stock prices, but by the futures he was helping to build. 5 years later, the transformation was complete and deeply settled. Ben, now a happy and confident 10-year-old, chased his little sister, a bright-eyed toddler with Grace's warm smile, through the sun-dappled gardens. Ethan, no longer hidden behind the armor of a tailored suit at home, would often be found on the lawn, his sleeves rolled up, engaged in a game of tag or simply watching his family with a look of pure, unadulterated contentment. The ghosts of the past had not been erased, but had gently made way for the vibrant life that now filled every corner of their world. The mansion was no longer a place of sorrow, but a home where new memories were being woven every day, each one a thread of laughter, love, and unwavering security. One evening, Ethan stood in the doorway of their daughter's room, watching as Grace rocked her to sleep, softly singing the same lullaby that had first cracked open his heart. But this time, he wasn't an observer peering through a crack in the door. He walked in, sat beside them, and wrapped his arm around his wife, his heart full to the point of overflowing. He had found more than just love. He had found the courage to live again, fully and without reservation. It's stories like this that show us the true meaning of home and the healing power of connection. By subscribing, you ensure that we can continue to share these powerful reminders that love is the greatest fortune of all, a gift worth fighting for.